Well, hello, hello. This is Karin Zoe Lee, and you're listening to Lotus Moon Productions. Welcome to LMP Music. Whatever the music, whatever the tune, we're here to learn, discuss, and promote the independent music scene. So sit back, relax, and enjoy the next 45 minutes as Shugo Hanasaki tackles the music industry one artist at a time.
Welcome back to the music side of Lotus Moon Productions. I can't believe it's February already. For all you Valentine lovers out there, be sure to get something for that special someone. And if Valentine's Day isn't your thing, then eat all the chocolate you like, because chocolate is just awesome. Am I right? Make it a self-care with the best treats you can manage. But getting back to our guest of the hour, this week on LMP Music, we're sitting down with one of the nicest guys known within the synthwave community. It's been an absolute privilege getting to know him. He has worked with synthwave stars such as Power Rob and Dana Jean Phoenix, and recently released his debut album Ascend back on October 30th. With a deep, rich, inspiring sound and tracks that give you that in-depth future feel, I'm absolutely honored to introduce Scott from Elevate the Sky. How's it going today, man?
Hey, it's going great. Thank you for having me on, and thanks for that awesome introduction, dude.
Oh, no problem. It's an absolute privilege to have you on the podcast, man.
Awesome. Thank you.
So I think the best way to start off the conversation is where did the name Elevate the Sky come from? I mean, it's quite breathtaking, if I'm honest.
Oh, thanks. So actually, originally I was called Fear's End, and I'd had that name for a while because I had released an album under it. And it was kind of like electronic rock, progressive rock kind of mixture. And during that time, I was already starting to kind of do a little more synth-oriented type of music songwriting. And, as time went on, I mean, just every time I told people the name of the band, it was like, oh, cool, man. Is it metal? Or, they kept thinking it was like a heavy metal band. And I was like, okay, time to change the name, So I was trying to think of something uplifting, something positive, something about just, carpe diem, seize the day type of attitude. And one of the first things that popped into my mind was sky's the limit. But I thought, I'm pretty sure that's taken. And I was right. I looked it up on Reverb Nation, I think, and it was like a few bands called that. So I thought, I don't know, maybe go beyond the sky, even though that's, basically what it means is just that there's no limits except the sky above you. And I thought, elevate the sky, And then I just kind of had other names and then just kind of sent them out to some friends and family. And that name is the one that kept, popping up as being their favorite. So I thought, you know what, I'll stick with Elevate the Sky.
Well, jumping into more of your origins, and I absolutely love that too. The sky is the limit, and what an inspirational name to have for a synthwave band specifically. And I've read that you grew up in a very musical household, courtesy of your interview with Forged in Neon, and I urge listeners to go and read that because it was really, really sweet interview. But you spoke a little bit about how things started and inspirations on how you became a singer, from watching Blade Runner for the visuals, loving Michael Jackson, and knowing that you wanted a career in music after you saw your first Kiss concert, which was just Kiss. Seeing Kiss live must have been incredible. I mean, what a band they are.
Oh, yeah.
Yeah, I mean, could you share more on your inspirations from the past to the present and what you've been able to take away from them?
Oh, yeah, for sure. Yeah, I mean, I was very lucky because when I was growing up, the first thing I remember was music. I mean, just as soon as I could remember life itself, my parents listening to the Eagles and Journey and stuff like that, and all the classics like the Stylistics and the Temptations. And then I had my older sister that would listen to all the disco stuff and prog rock like Kansas and Journey and that kind of thing. And then I had my brother who gave me more of the influence of pop music as well as a little bit of prog, because he was into Asia and Steely Dan and Journey, Boston, Foreigner, that kind of stuff. So it was all like old school stuff. And then my younger sister is the one that got me into rock and roll, all the rock stuff like Kiss and Motley Crue, Led Zeppelin, AC/DC, that kind of stuff. And I just kind of like started from that and then just branched over to Michael Jackson because I had seen the video for Thriller and that's all it took and I was hooked. I
Yeah.
was like, oh my gosh, I want to be this guy, you know? Here I was, like, probably 7 years old, just, trying those dance moves. And, from that point on, it was just like music was an addiction. And it just led from that point to my sister giving me my very first cassette tape, which was Kiss Animalize. And I was hooked from that point on too for rock music and got into like Metallica and all the other stuff that led to, the heavy metal kind of stuff. And, as time went on, as I got older and I picked up my first guitar, well, I actually picked up the guitar uh, probably a year prior to going to see my first concert, which was my Kiss concert. And what ended up happening there was I think one of my friends was playing guitar, and you know how it is when you're younger, you're just so inspired by everything your friends do. They're just like everything. And he was playing this really awesome Kramer guitar. It was white, just like off of Wayne's World.
Nice.
Yeah, and I was like, oh man, I want that. And so I sold my comic books and went to the pawn shop and got this really cheap, ugly guitar, one of the ugliest guitars you could ever have. So ugly, I don't even think it had a name on the headstock. And yeah, so that was the start of my musical journey. And then from that point on, I got into my first few bands, which was kind of like punk and glam rock. And then it led to, being into a couple of metal bands. And but for some reason, it was like, by the time I reached my 20s, it was like, okay, I'm starting to miss the music I started out on, which was like more pop and more synth oriented, like you were saying earlier about Vangelis with the Blade Runner soundtrack. And then I just started revisiting that. And at the same time, my brother was showing me EDM, old techno and trance
Yeah, yeah.
and stuff like Robert Miles and Armin van Buuren. And so that just kind of like lit the fire back in me for other styles of music besides rock music. So that's when I started to kind of explore that. And during that era, I think it was 2011, like January, my brother said, hey, let's go see a movie. And so we go down to the movie theater and we couldn't find anything. So we go to another movie theater and Tron Legacy was playing.
Nice.
So I said, why don't we see that? And my brother's like, okay, we'll watch that one. And after I got out of the theater, at that point, I'd already written my first solo album, which was what I was talking about earlier, electronic rock, prog rock. And it was exactly what I've always wanted to do, like in my head. I was always playing in and out of different styles of bands musically. But when I would sit by myself and just write songs, I would dabble in stuff that was a lot on the synthesizer. And I was like, man, it exists, and, Daft Punk just blew me away. And then I became a Daft Punk fan. And then after that, I think it was like around summer of that year, I wanted to revisit that soundtrack. So I got on YouTube, started to listen to it, and just fell down the rabbit hole. And, by doing that, I discovered the remix album of that, Tron Legacy soundtrack. And then I just kept going. And then all of a sudden it was like Kavinsky. I was like, what is that? So I click on that and I was like, whoa, this is like that Tron Legacy stuff. It sounds very 80s. And then from there, I found Laserhawk Redline, the whole album. And then that was it. And then, from that point, I started listening to that. And also I was really big into dubstep. But it wasn't until Electric Youth that I discovered, I think, 2015, that I just completely fell in love with the genre. Even though I loved what I heard at first with Laserhawk and Kavinsky, it was just kind of like, oh, another genre that I like. But after Electric Youth, it was like it became my favorite genre now. And then just from there, it really inspired me to kind of to write more like that, which oddly, I have a few old songs that I've yet to release that I'm hoping to release this year that I wrote back in 1999 that actually have that sound, that synth wavy kind of sound. So it was always there, I think it was just from being inspired by Vangelis and Tangerine Dream, from my growing up in childhood. So yeah, I mean that was the musical journey, and I think that's what's so wild about music is it's limitless, and you just discover so many things along the way. When you're young, you're kind of like you have that one genre you like.
Yeah.
You're just stuck on it. But for some reason, after that little period, maybe from like 13 to like 18, it's like just the whole world of music opens up to you, and then you're just like in love with it.
Yeah, I mean that's a brilliant answer of all of that. I mean, like I could definitely see where Elevate the Sky came from now because the sky is the limit in this case
Yeah.
scenario. And you have so many inspirations. I love the story about Tron Legacy. I mean, it's a great movie overall. I mean, even the first one
Yeah.
is fantastic, and that 80s sound, that 80s feel. I mean, even me, I'm 31 now. And I grew up listening to a lot of pop music, but then also rock music, mixed it with Japanese at times. And
Nice.
then I started listening to a little bit more different things like deep house, tropical house, which then led me down to that rabbit hole as we're talking about to synthwave. And I was like, what is synthwave? And I was like, oh my God, it's that 80s sound that I've always loved. So and then I
Yeah.
just connected with so many different bands like bands like yourself, and it's an incredible sound. I mean, I know you mentioned in that Forge and Neon interview as well that it was liberating.
Yes, it was. It was like discovering, well, like it's the cliche of like, oh, I'm searching for myself. And, it's like after discovering that, it was like, oh, I found myself. It was that feeling, it was very liberating.
Yeah, and with bands like Journey and Foreigner and Michael Jackson, I mean, I'm not sure if there's many Foreigner synthwave covers out there, but I mean, one of my favorite songs by Foreigner is Urgent, and if someone
Oh,
knocks
yeah.
that out of the park, I could just picture it in my head, some sort of like synth rock version of Urgent. I think that would just be mint.
Oh, man, it would totally be brilliant. Yeah, I mean, I'm super shocked no one has, or at least that I know of, has tried to cover any types of, foreigner songs. But yeah, Urgent, man, I could totally hear that because it has all those cool synth sounds in it anyways, so it would totally work.
Yeah, and it's got that sax too, like
Yeah.
I mean, I'm not even gonna lie, I'm a slut for the sax.
Oh yeah. Oh yeah. I mean that's one thing I miss. If it wasn't for synthwave, I mean we wouldn't really have sax. Like I don't even hear it in anything else really. Every
Yeah.
now and then you'll hear it, but not like they did in the 80s. That's one thing I loved about the 80s also is you just had this mishmash of every instrument. Like it didn't matter if the song was as pop as you could get. They would have just rocking guitar, crunchy sound in the background. They would have a really melodic, sax solo in the bridge. So it was just an era of experimentation, and I think that's why so many people, love the 80s because when you go back, you can find anything you want. Like if you're into the rawest, most crazy, hardcore music or punk or whatever, you can find it. Or if you're into heavy metal or thrash, you can find it. Progressive rock, pop music, hip hop, it's all there,
Yeah.
And I think that they were able to kind of blend all these styles of music together and it worked.
Yeah, I mean there's a few synth covers out there that are really good to me. I mean I've heard a lot of different synthwave covers, but I mean a few like Scandroid did that cover of Thriller,
Yeah.
and I mean that was just mint. Like the second I heard that, I was like, oh my God, we need more Michael Jackson covers. I mean,
Oh, yeah.
could we ever get a Michael Jackson cover from Elevate the Sky?
It's a possibility. I love, to this day, even though that was like my first kind of, artist that I was crazy about, I still to this day love Michael Jackson. So yeah, it's very possible. And speaking of covers, have you heard Easy Lovers covered by Neon Arcadia?
You took the words out of my mouth, man.
I mean,
I was about
that's
to
like
mention that next.
my that might possibly be my favorite cover in synthwave so far. It's
Yeah,
just amazing.
yeah. I was just talking to actually Karen about that. Karen and Zoe Lee.
Oh yeah.
Yeah, and we were talking about that over Facebook, and I had just heard it for the first time like a month ago, and I was like, "Oh my God, Easy Lover, Phil Collins." I was like,
I
"Damn,
know, right?
this is hot. Like, this is
Yeah.
amazing. Yeah, and I mean, Phil Collins is one of those, absolute gems of an audience or of an artist. So when someone covers something from him, they got to give it some true love.
Oh yeah, yeah. I mean, he is definitely. I mean, you always have your uh, big influences that you can hear from just about anybody that you talk to that does music, and it's always going to be, depending on what side of the spectrum you're on, it's either going to be like the Beatles, Led Zeppelin, or Metallica, or it's going to be Madonna, Prince, Michael Jackson. But it's also like Phil Collins, Genesis. I mean, it's always a staple in people's, album collections.
For sure. Now, getting into your official debut album, Ascend, we'll be sharing some track previews throughout our interview to give the audience a bit of what to expect. But one thing I wanted to touch on was the introduction of the album. I found it to be incredibly powerful. The first two tracks really set the mood, as Dana Jean Phoenix's voice really breaks the wall in that third track. These walls, no pun intended.
I love it. I love what you did there.
Yeah, and I love how it has hope right next to it too. I feel that's the energy that Dana Jean Phoenix brings to a lot of her music. Could you talk about that introduction to the album and why you chose the way it did? And Dana Jean just really brings it to life.
Oh yeah, thank you. The original title of the album was going to be called Hope, and it was going to be an autobiography. Because I always wanted to write like a concept album that's just kind of like my actual experiences in life. So just kind of, leading from song to song. And I kind of scrapped that idea because I was running low on money, on my budget to record the album and have it mixed a few years back. And so I decided just to do an EP. And that's why I decided, I'll do that later down the road. And as time went on, I ended up mixing the album myself, except for Wild Hearts, which is mixed by John Kunkel of the New Division. And then Race Against Time 2.0 is mixed by James Bowen of Droid Bishop. And but outside of that, I mixed the rest of it. And it ended up being a full album anyway. So I was like, of course, And so it was kind of like loosely based on the original idea. And I thought, well, I think like most of us, our experiences, it's always about kind of trying to ascend above who you are. Like you always feel like you can be the better version of yourself. And so I kind of went off of that theme, and I thought, okay, I'll call the album Ascend. And it just made a lot of sense to me because not only just about adversity and just kind of rising above things, but also at the same time, I'd experienced a few really important people in my life, had left the earth. And that's another thing. It's all about not just acceptance, but finding positive in things like that. And I thought, Ascend, once again, it just fits that title, just fits what's going on in my life. And so I did that. And leading up to Dana Jean Phoenix, it was just, honestly, it was so easy, like, because I had a few people in mind because I wanted, the song actually was called Hope, and I'd written it, the lyrics and everything else, and I just didn't like it. So I scrapped the lyrics and just kept the music and decided that I'm going to find a female singer because I just thought in my head it just would totally fit. And I wanted it to be like very movie-esque, very soundtracky. And so I just, found a few female artists to contact, and thought, man, it'd be really awesome to have Dana Jean Phoenix on this. But I thought, normally you think, oh, she's not going to respond, But so I just went for it. I said, okay, I'll just message her. What's the worst thing she could do? Just not respond or just say no. So I did, and she was really nice. We had a good conversation. She said, send me the song, and I'll see what I can do, if it's something that would fit what I'm doing. And so I sent it to her, and it was probably 2 or 3 days. She sent it back, and I didn't have to do any revisions. I was like, that's it. It's done. So, yeah, she's amazing.
Yeah, she absolutely is incredible. I mean, we spoke to her back on episode 10. I mean, cheap plug. I highly suggest to go back and listen to that. But she's just she's amazing to talk to as well. She's so sweet. She's so nice.
Oh yeah.
not only was the song a success, but could you tell us also the inspiration behind the video? Because that video was pretty deep.
Oh yeah, yeah. I have to actually give a lot of credit to, most credit to Brad A. Kanan, who is just not only such a great videographer, works for Dynamic Creative, but also an amazing friend. I mean, he's just so creative. And I met him through Michael Oakley, actually, because I had sent a couple songs for Michael Oakley to mix, and actually these walls. And so he had, asked me, Michael asked me if I was going to, had plans to do a music video. And I was like, oh, yeah, definitely. I definitely want to do music video for the first single. And so he said, you know what, you should contact Brad A. Knan. He gave me his phone number, and I called him. And I mean, we just hit it off. We probably talked for like 2 hours on the phone or something like that. It was either that or Skype. I remember there was something like that where we talked for like 2 hours. And, so I think what happened, okay, we talked on the phone first, and then we set up a Skype like this, to get on Skype and talk about the video. And so I sent him the song, These Walls, and we decided to do Skype the next day, I think. And then we got on Skype, and he was just so excited. He was like bouncing off his seat pretty much. And he's like, I've got it, man. I've got all these ideas. He's like, I want to hear your ideas too, though. But, do you want me to tell you all these ideas, or you tell me yours? And I was like, dude, I want to hear yours, So he tells me his ideas, and it was like, dude, that's it. I don't want to tell you my ideas because that's it. Because he had the idea down perfect. He was like, I have a friend who has a place in downtown, so it'd be perfect scenic view, of downtown, because you can get up on the roof on his apartment and everything, and also has these really cool transparent like greenhouse cubes in his house or in the apartment. And I was like, wow, dude, that's amazing. So he come up with the idea that here I am trying to, break free from this little prison, and that eventually I would come to realize that, I had that power to, to free myself to begin with, that it wasn't actually a wall or anything. It was myself that was holding myself back. And I was like, dude, that's brilliant, So yeah, man, like it was Brad Kanan who come up with that really cool video. And all the locations too, like he had them all like already in his head. Like he's like, dude, I know where we can film this. I know where we can go to film that. And I was like, man, I didn't have to do anything but show up,
I'm getting goosebumps just hearing about that. I mean, I love it. He should be directing more synthwave videos.
Yeah, he's amazing. I mean, he's done everybody, like Betamax and Vandal Moon and Michael Oakley, FM 84. I mean, he's got quite a amazing clientele list.
Wow. Well, that's amazing. I'm so glad that I asked that, because I was like, when I watched the video, I was like, damn, this video is deep. I gotta hear how it came together. So yeah, thank you very much for that.
Oh yeah, you're welcome.
Now, speaking of collaborations, a few weeks before you released Ascend, I mentioned at the beginning of the podcast that you worked with Power Rob. Now, the track entitled So Alive didn't make it to the album, but it's become one of my favorites of yours. Was it supposed to be a solo release, or was it meant for the album?
Oh, cool. Good question. Actually, so I'd written this song. I guess I wrote it around 2019, musically, and I dabbled in, a lot of ideas on with vocals and stuff like that, and nothing stuck. So I just put it on the shelf basically and forgot about it. And one day Rob, he just contacts me on Facebook and says, hey man, I was wondering if you had, any kind of synth wave type songs lying around that you don't want to use. And I said, oh, let me check. And I, open up, all these hard drives looking for stuff. And there it was, that song. And I'd already titled it So Alive. And I was like, dude, yeah, I totally do. And so I sent him all this, I think I sent him 4 songs. And the next day he contacts me and says, dude, check this out. he had written So Alive, and it was just, it was awesome. He had everything, the lyrics and the melodies, everything was already done. All he had to do was record the vocals in the studio. So yeah, initially it wasn't going to go on anything, but that's why it was released as a solo effort and not, basically just on an album because it was just out of the blue, to be honest with you.
Well, I mean, it's a fantastic song. I mean, it feels like
Oh,
a
thanks.
perfect, yeah, for sure. I mean, it feels like a futuristic driving track within a digital metropolis, and I'd love to share a clip of it with the audience and perhaps chat the inspiration behind it too, and how you and Power Rob came together. I mean, we already learned a little bit about that, but if that's cool with you, we'll share a clip of it.
Oh, totally. Awesome, man.
All right, so before we dive into a couple of tracks from your debut album, here's a 45-second clip of So Alive by Elevate the Sky featuring Power Rob.
So you know that everybody chased me. So you know now I'm alive in lead. And now I'm restless. She's gorgeous and the night is on fire. Oh, I'm tempted. She's reckless with a smile she inspires. When we try to see some make believe, she speaks to me so carelessly. We're so alive and so alive. We'll never ever be apart, but I'm so wrong with me. It's in my heart, but I'm so gone with me. We're so alive, we're so alive.
Now, getting back to the inspiration behind the track, we talked about how you and Power Up came together, but what were the lyrics based upon?
I don't really know if they were kind of inspired by actual events. But, just from kind of his perspective, I guess, that relationship where you feel powerless almost, but at the same time, it empowers you. I don't know if that makes sense. Like you're kind of like, somebody that just kind of brings the best out of you, but
Yeah,
but you're very timid towards them in a way, but you kind of put on this front to kind of, hide that intimidation or whatever. So I think it's that this kind of amazing connection that it's so powerful that it's intimidating, but at the same time, it really makes you do things that you normally wouldn't do, to make that happen, like a relationship, for example.
yeah.
That person that you might see for the first time that you just completely, it's love at first sight, or that first conversation with somebody you just hit it off with, it's that feeling. As far as like what it was inspired from, I have no idea. Power Rob would definitely be the one to ask for that.
Well, hopefully one day we can have him on the podcast, and because I would love to talk to Power Up.
Oh yeah, I'm sure he would do it. He's super guy, super nice.
Now, like we're chatting all about collaborations here. Are there any other people within the synth community that you would love to collaborate with?
Oh man, where to begin? I mean, because there's so many. I mean, man, Michael Oakley, Ollie Ride, Nina, JJ Mist. There's just an incredible amount of people. But luckily, I've had the pleasure of collaborating with a few that I've wanted to collaborate with, like Sound Engine, Starfarer, and Neverman. So, I'm really blessed there. But yeah, man, collaborating with anybody in the scene actually is something I really enjoy. I think it kind of like, it's a little bit different than writing for yourself, because when you write with other people or collaborate with them, it's like being in a band, I guess. You kind of have to, not only kind of, share the spotlight as in, like the different song ideas, but at the same time, it pushes you, So it's just a totally different beast than just writing, on your own. But at the same time, it's really fun too, because there's things that they'll present to you that inspires something you would have never come up with if it wasn't for that.
For sure. I mean, deep in my gut, honest to God, I feel that there is something there with you and Michael Oakley.
Oh, thanks. I would love to collaborate with him, but he stays so busy. Like I've talked to him, actually talked to him more than I, you know, would have ever thought I would talk to him because, he stays so busy. But
Yeah.
yeah, I mean, he's done so many amazing things. Like he's collaborated a lot with Ollie Ride, like Ollie's first solo album, has a big hand in that. And just so many people that I know that he's inspired or kind of collaborated with. And but yeah, I mean, it'd be awesome. I did do a remix for him though. I did a remix of Crystal Ships back in 2019, I think early 2019, and that was just the highlight of that year for me because he contacted me and said, "Hey man, would you want to do a remix of one of my songs?" And I was like, "Dude, without a doubt."
For
And
sure.
and to top it off, he gave me a choice. It wasn't like, "Hey, do a remix of this song." He was like, "Dude, I'm gonna let you pick whatever you want." I was like, "Dude, Crystal Ships, hands down."
Yeah.
Um, but it was intimidating though because that song is so good. But it, like once again, going back to what I was talking about earlier, it pushes you though, so you learn from it. You learn from doing those, remixes or collaborations because you're put in this on the spot to do something. I mean, it's not really about trying to come up with something better. It's, there's no such thing, but it's more about coming up with something that is inspiring, you don't want to go take this amazing song and then do a remix of it and then it's just bland.
Right.
So,
Yeah. Yeah. I mean, often a lot of times that happens, but definitely not with
yeah.
that. Definitely not with that remix though. Definitely not.
Oh,
It, it,
thank
it's a,
you.
it's a fantastic remix.
Thank you.
Now, getting back to your debut album, Ascend, we won't be sharing a track preview for this particular song, but I wanted to talk about Superhero Fly Away.
Awesome.
I loved the crossover metaphors of the Marvel and DC universe, and I had to ask, how did such an inspiring song come together? I mean, I imagine you're a fan of the superhero universe after listening
Yes.
to that.
Totally. Yeah. Yeah. I mean, I grew, like I was saying earlier in the interview about selling comics to buy my first guitar.
Yeah.
Totally. Avengers, X-Men, Justice League, Batman, Superman, Spider-Man. I mean, just a fan of all that kind of stuff. And the song actually came about. Actually, it's a pretty old song. Actually, it came out in 2000 and wanted to say 2013 because what happened is me and my girlfriend went to see Man of Steel and just musically, I mean, Hans Zimmer, you know, it's hard not to get inspired by Hans Zimmer. So after hearing that and seeing the visuals, it just blew me away. It was very inspiring. It was, one of the best. A lot of people don't seem to like that movie. I mean, I can understand there was certain things about it, like the action in it was just very exhausting. But visually, the story, the acting, the music, to me, it was just such a great film. And so I got home and had that melody in my head, the chorus, and I didn't have any lyrics or anything. So I just kind of had that, and then just wrote the music around it, and thought, you know what, it would be cool to write a song that kind of, ties in all these superheroes, but could be like a metaphor for, kind of like breaking out of struggle or things like that, and finding yourself, which tends to be, a theme that I like to write about a lot. If you haven't noticed already, sat down and I wrote all those lyrics, and that's how that came about. Is just, I really wanted to kind of include, some of the more popular superheroes from both universes. And, so it's just kind of like how, we always look up to people that we think are larger than life. We think they're superheroes, whether it's we're looking at actors or athletes or the president or whatever it is you look at in life. You always think that they're so untouchable and unreachable and they're better than us, and you feel like you can never like reach that level. So it's about seeing that, but then realizing that no, that's not the case, that we always have that in us. And I wanted to write it in such a way that it could almost be a relationship song or a song that's spiritual or a song that's about, self-empowerment. And I hope that comes across that way. I hope it doesn't seem like it's just like, oh, it's just about this, you know.
Yeah, I mean, not to sound cliche or anything, but I mean, to some people around the world, you are that superhero to them now.
Oh, thanks.
I mean, you release music with beautiful lyrics. People look up to these lyrics. They're like, oh my gosh, I can connect with that. And then they look at you as one of those heroes. So it's like, heroes are just in our backyard. And I mean, the song itself is a beautiful shout out to childhood memories that just should never be forgotten. And
Oh,
that excellent guitar solo in the middle and having the children's choir at the end just brought all of the right feelings.
oh, thank you. Thank you so much. Yeah, I mean, you're exactly right, though. Like, I think that, even though the pandemic has a lot of negatives, obviously the unfortunate, lives lost is, a big one. But the positives out of it is that I think it can be eye-opening to see that exactly what you're talking about, which is, the true heroes in life are those people like, whether they're working endlessly at the grocery stores to make sure we get our food,
Yeah.
or at the hospitals, the nurses, the doctors, uh, everybody that puts their life on the line, the policemen, and it just like you're right, like, and those people are us, same, we're all the same people. And I think, like, yeah, you're right. Like, if we just see that we have all this potential, we'd focus more on positive things like that instead of negatives and fighting about little things.
Yeah, one thing I've been getting into a habit of is been thanking a lot of workers. Like it doesn't matter where they are, is because I mean, frankly, with me, I'm on disability, so I'm at home, and I'm not wearing a mask 8 hours a day or 12 hours a day and being out
Yeah,
there. And whether you're a doctor, a nurse, again, working at the grocery store, getting people their food, it's really, really difficult. And I can't even imagine the amount of anxiety that is just sitting in people while they have to, do
oh
their eight
yeah,
to five job right now. So when I'm
oh
out,
my
I,
goodness.
I make it a habit. I make it a habit to thank these people. And some of them are
Yeah,
like, thank me for what? And I'm like, do you have any idea how difficult it is to do what you're doing? You're amazing. You have so much strength. So it's like,
so true.
thank you for being behind the counter and taking my money while I get my groceries, right?
Yeah, exactly. And
Oh,
risking your life every single day you go, like
yeah,
while we get to stay at home and be safe, yeah, they have to be there. And yeah, they're true heroes. And one of my best friends, his name is Gabriel. He just pushes it all the time. He's always working uh, on the front lines, and so yeah, man, it just makes you appreciate not only just life, but it makes you appreciate people in general. Just realizing, in those moments that, wait a minute, people are really great, because it's easy to fall in the trap of, oh man, people are mean and they're evil, and you cut me off on the road, or so and so doesn't have my political beliefs, or it's
yeah.
really easy to do that, but it's so liberating when you can look at people and just look for all the positives instead. And then, like, when this stuff happens, you really start to see that.
For sure. For sure. Now, getting back to sharing another track preview, one of the tracks we discussed off air was Neon Summer. And I'm very eager to share this laid back, beautiful track. Are you up for sharing a preview of it and then diving into the background of it?
Oh, sure. Totally, man. Let's get into it.
Sweet. Thank you so much, Scott. So let's get right into it. Here's a 45-second clip of Neon Summer from Elevate the Sky's new album, Ascend. Now, the message of Neon Summer is breathtaking. On Bandcamp, you described it as the blissful experience of chasing the dream, living life, and loving it. And I couldn't agree more. The sax within the middle of the track really lifts you up. I don't know what it is about the sax, whether it's artificial or the real deal, but I mean, I told you before I was a slut for it. But within the synth community, it adds a special element all on its own. I think it's one, if not my favorite track on the album. How did such a track come to be?
Oh man, honestly, this track was inspired by a couple things. One of the things I like to do when I write music is I'll either take a movie trailer or a movie and I'll mute the sound and then I'll watch it and just see if something comes out, like musically and stuff like that. Inspires a good 90% of my music. And Miracle Mile, it's just one of my favorite movies of all time. And I could watch that movie over and over. And what ended up happening is it was like right at the very beginning of the pandemic. And I think I had watched it, during the first time that it hit. And I was sitting there just listening to it. I mean, Tangerine Dream does the soundtrack, so it's like really hard not to get inspired. And so it came because of that, listening to that, and then just watching the movie on mute. It just kind of inspired that melody, that original melody that's also echoed in City of Angels. Um, and after I did that melody, the first thing that came to my mind was this visual in my head of Los Angeles. And then what inspired that was just my journey I've had so far with my girlfriend, because we met in San Francisco. And what's crazy is, I didn't know, but once we start talking more, we both realized that we both had planned to move to Los Angeles. And it was like, oh, that's cool. And so we decided down the road that why don't we move to Los Angeles? We both wanted to at one point. So we moved to Los Angeles and it was just so amazing. It was quite an adventure and just being able to experience. I mean, we did everything, whether it was going to Santa Monica Pier, uh, all the Hollywood Hills and all that kind of the stuff like that. It just seemed so surreal. And so while I was thinking about that, it just kind of instantly just the lyrics kind of wrote themselves. And what a weird mixture though. Miracle Mile is like apocalyptic, and then you
Yeah.
have these lyrics that are like all happy and oh, it's this journey of finding oneself, or discovering together and living life at the full, at your fullest, desires and things like that. But yet the music was inspired by this really dark movie. So it is kind of a dichotomy, I guess.
It's like getting inspired by Die Hard for a children's song.
Yeah. Yeah.
No, I love it though. I love it. Inspiration comes in all different ways.
Yeah. Oh, yeah. You just never know where it's going to come from.
Now, before we get to the third track on the album, one thing I know a lot of people are interested in is equipment or music gear, if you will. Now, I remember in your interview with Forged in Neon, and I keep shouting back to them, so definitely go and check.
Oh, man. Love Ashley Anita. I mean, Forge and Neon is like one of the, I'd like to, I mean, maybe not the original, as far as, being the first, but I would like to say one of the first to really pick up the synth scene and really push and help everybody out.
So with Forged in Neon, you discussed what equipment you used and that you wanted to touch upon it during this interview. And apologies for my ignorance, but I'm actually quite uneducated when it comes to equipment that artists use to create music with. So I was hoping you could share what equipment you used for your latest album and also educate me and the audience who are unaware just a little bit.
Yeah, I mean, I think it's so wild. It's like when you're a musician, you're always chasing something. Like even to this day, I'm still chasing like, oh, this equipment will make my music sound better, or this will. And it's just the ongoing, never-ending chase. But what's so interesting about that is the more that you do it, the more you realize that actually it's not the equipment. It's actually knowing how to use whatever equipment you have, and that's what ends up making it sound the way it does. what's wild about this album is that, I was saying earlier about how I was, wanting to have somebody mix the album. And it took me years of, trying to figure out how I'm going to do this. Because, for one, it's pretty expensive to have somebody else mix and master. And just at some point, I decided I'm just going to have to do it myself. So I went on this journey of learning how to mix and things like that. And I still have a ways to go, but I think the whole thing with it is just saying, you know what, you just get it out there, and everybody goes through that. When you listen to some people's first albums, they're never like as good as sounding as their third album. So I think that's just a natural progression. And so by doing that, I really, kind of learned that, oh, well, that's just normal to go through that. And the reason why I'm bringing all this up is because I ended up using pretty much what I have, to mix the album, and to not be afraid to put it out there. And so what I used is Logic Pro X. I love Logic Pro X, and what it is a DAW, which is just a digital audio workstation where you just record the music and edit, and you throw on plugins, VSTs to, EQ them and things like that. And also use Slate Digital, which is a company based out of Los Angeles that I really love, where they, produce a lot of VST plugins, which is like the effects that you put on all your WAV files. So I used that, and I used a little bit of the DeepMind 12 from Behringer, which is a really nice synthesizer, which is based off the classic Juno 106. And so it's basically that synthesizer, but kind of souped up, because you have all these effects on there to, make it more modern. And you could even it's an analog synthesizer, but because of the effects and a little bit more bells and whistles than the 106, you can actually make it sound like a digital synthesizer. So I used that, and then I also used a Shure SM7B for the vocals microphone, which I struggled with for a while, because I've spent thousands of dollars on microphones. And because one of the things you do when you're recording is you have to, for the most part, have a treated room, especially when you're doing vocals. And that's why they usually have, I don't know if you've seen in a recording studio, they'll have a booth, and the singers will be inside of that booth singing.
Yeah.
Because they want to cut out all sound. That way they can manipulate it any way they want. And, while they're mixing, whether it's they want to add their own reverb sound instead of the room reverb they're actually singing in, or if they want the vocals to be completely dry to express a certain emotion of, being close with somebody. So that's why they do that. And I struggled with that because I've always lived in an apartment with a lot of echo or reverberation. And so I'd buy stuff. Like I had a Manley reference microphone, which is, oh my gosh, it was almost $3,000.
Oh my goodness.
And it just, even buying that, I was not getting good results. And I had Neumann's and all these other types of $1,000 microphones, and ended up getting the Shure SM7B, which is a dynamic microphone. And the difference is the other mics I was talking about is called a condenser microphone, and it's a lot more sensitive, and it has a multi-directional, capsule, which will record everything. So basically, if a dog is barking like 2 blocks away, it's going to pick it up,
Oh, wow.
And but the good thing about a one direction mic, like a dynamic microphone like the Shure SM7B, is even though it still might pick up a few things around you, it's mainly going to be focused right in front of the capsule itself, which is the front of the microphone. And so I ended up buying that mic because I'd read about it. And for people that were saying, if you don't have a treated room or a vocal booth, get this microphone. And they were right, because I don't even have a treated room anymore, and I just sing in the room, and it sounds good. So yeah, so it's just like I was saying earlier about being able to utilize how you utilize the tools you have instead of like spend thousands of dollars on stuff you think that's going to make you sound good. Instead, it's more about like knowing what you're doing when you're using anything, like whether it's $100 or $2,000. And so yeah, that's pretty much the gear I used. A lot of the instruments that I like to use outside of the DeepMind 12 is I used a lot of virtual instruments like Diva, Silent, also use Spire, Omnisphere, and Tau Uno LX. So that would actually, if you'll talk to probably a good portion of the synthwave community, that's probably the synthesizers, the VSTs they'll be using. It's just a huge staple for the synthwave scene because a lot of those emulate like a lot of the old 80s, 70s synthesizers, like Oberheims and Junos, all that kind of good stuff.
Well, thank you very much for all of that. I mean, color me a little less ignorant now. And we've definitely learned that quality costs. Oh man. So the third and final preview we discussed about sharing was the 7th track on the album Wild Hearts. So we'll share a 45-second clip of that, and then we'll dive into the background of it. How's that sound?
Sounds awesome, man.
All right, cool. Here is a 45-second clip of Wild Hearts from Elevate the Sky's new album, Ascend. On Bandcamp, the song is described as a feel-good, neon-drenched song about taking chances and living life to the fullest and falling in love. And now that seems to be the theme of Elevate the Sky and Ascend and everything that we heard about. So I figured this would be a great song to end this. So what inspired you behind such an empowering love song?
Oh man, once again going back to my formula. So me and my girlfriend were watching Black Mirror San Junipero, and after watching that, it was just, every once in a while you just get this amazing feeling, and it could be a happy feeling or it could be this very melancholic feeling after watching a movie or some show. And for me personally anyway, it only happens every once in a while, and it just really moves you. And that just moved me. Like watching San Junipero just really got to me. And because of that, I instantly wrote Wild Hearts. But, the way I work, like I was saying, like this kind of formula I have is, even though I'll have something inspire me, like a movie or something like that, I also reach for something that's happened in reality for me. I feel like it's super important to kind of like really express, and share with people your actual experiences. And so that song, well, actually, just the show inspired me a lot because it reminded me of how I met my girlfriend. So, well, actually, we met because we worked in the same place, but we just kind of talked here and there. So I guess more or less just how we got together is the correct thing. So what happened is one of my good friends, Danny, I'd worked with, he was moving to Chicago, and everybody was sad because everybody loves Danny. I mean, you just have to know Danny is this, like happy-go-lucky, very flamboyant, just, super guy. And,
Nice.
so, him leaving, it was just like so sad and everything. So he's like, you know what, I'll just throw a party. And so he decided to throw a party at a karaoke bar. And, and I think I had worked or something, and I was super tired, and I was like, man, I really got to go see him. I already told him goodbye and everything, and I thought that was kind of part of me saying, well, you're good. But I thought that's not really nice. And so I was trying to convince myself to go home. And I said, nah, I don't know. And so I was just trying to decide what to do. And so just being me, because I'm kind of spiritual, I just kind of like tell the universe, you know what, decide for me. And so I'm driving home and I'm almost home and I can't remember what happened. It seemed like something happened where a car just kind of runs a stop sign or something. I can't remember what exactly happened, but it was something that made me stop and just think again. And because of that, I was like, you know what? I'm going. So I turned around and went to the karaoke bar and met, saw her there. And we started hanging out. And we even got up there and sang and everything else, which is weird because, I'm usually shy, singing around girls I have crushes on. But so that's what ended up happening is kind of tying that story into seeing what was happening, watching San Junipero, where they met in that bar, and that kind of seeing each other across the room and that kind of, you know, nervousness that you have, and kind of it, but at the same time, you just have like this energy pulling you no matter what that you can't deny. And so that's how that came about, is just pulling those two elements together, and then that's just where Wild Hearts came from.
I absolutely love that. I was all smiles. I mean,
Thanks.
I wish you could see me, but that is an incredible story. I love it. I absolutely.
Oh, thank you.
Now we have about 5 minutes left on the podcast, and let's learn a little bit more about the man of the hour on a personal level. So outside of music, I mean, I'm always interested in learning hobbies and interests, maybe TV shows, self-care rituals, favorite food, sports, whatever it is, you name it. It could be anything that you're comfortable sharing. But outside of music, who is Scott?
Oh, wow. Scott is actually this really goofy and crazy guy who, really loves to just goof off and make people laugh. I have so many things that I love. Like, I'm really big on romantic comedies and horror films. Like, I'm huge into horror movies, like especially stuff that's very psychological,
Yeah.
psychological thrillers, that kind of thing. Like, I'm totally into something that makes me think.
Yeah.
Um, I don't know. I'm like, even though I like stuff like slashers and the whole Nightmare on Elm Streets and the Friday the 13th and that kind of stuff, I'm more into stuff like Scanners, or The Invisible Man, or Possession, or Invasion of the Body Snatchers. Like, I'm more into that kind of stuff, and Alien, that kind of stuff, than I am the slasher kind of stuff. But yeah, I mean, even that I draw a lot of influence from that into my music as well. I don't know if you remember, I had released a song off of the In Search of Darkness soundtrack for New Retro Wave. I guess it was 2019, called Inside Out, and that is totally inspired from that. That kind of
Yes.
that.
Yeah.
Yeah, I love that kind of stuff. So that's me. Yeah, it's just somebody that likes to goof off and make people laugh, and then at the same time, my other extreme is just really loving these really depressing, melancholic horror or psychological thrillers. you know?
Yeah, there's nothing like about a thriller that makes you think, and I'm the same way. I gotta love a TV series or a movie that makes you think. Like I'm
Oh
really
yeah.
I'm really into time travel stuff too.
Oh yeah, totally.
One series that just ended there, I think it was a couple of years ago. It's kind of close to home now with the whole pandemic, but 12 Monkeys.
Oh man, that's such a great movie. Yeah,
Yeah,
totally.
the movie was excellent, but the TV series was amazing too. And if you haven't checked it out, go check it
Yeah,
out.
yeah, I need to check that out. Yeah, I haven't seen that one yet.
Well, as we start to bring things to a close, what can your audience expect out of Elevate the Sky in 2021? Will there be any more live streams, music videos, or future releases? And a shout out to your awesome live stream performance back in October too. I loved it.
Oh, thank you. Thank you so much. Yeah, so they can definitely expect some more live streams, and also hopefully a few more collaborations as well as another album and something I'm working on, and I hope that I don't know for sure if I'll be able to bring this out this year, but something I also want to work on is something more soundtrack oriented that hopefully will go to like a short film or something like that eventually. And as far as videos, I'm really pushing to work on another one with Brad. We really wanted to get together for Wild Hearts, but because of the pandemic and a lot of financial issues, it just didn't happen. But we definitely have things planned, and I'm really hoping that we could shoot something this year and present another cool video.
Sweet. Well, that's a great way to wrap things up. Thank you so much for spending this time with me, Scott. It was a blast getting to know you.
Oh, thank you, and you're welcome, man. And I totally had a blast. And thank you so much once again for having me on. And it's always fun to hang out and chat, dude.
Yeah, welcome back anytime. Maybe later on in the year we'll catch up and have you back on again.
Totally.
Could you share your social media with everyone so people know where to find your material?
Oh, yeah, yeah. So it's really, really easy because almost all of them except my Twitter is just Elevate the Sky. Just Instagram, Elevate the Sky, Facebook, Elevate the Sky, and Twitter is Elevate the Sky 1. So
Got to be different.
yeah, yeah. Somebody had taken Elevate the Sky off of Twitter, so I was like, wow, I didn't know that, because I'd searched and searched for a long time to make sure that nobody had taken Elevate the Sky, but it happens.
It definitely does. And thank you so much for that. And as for our socials, you can find us at SoundCloud under Lotus Moon Productions, Facebook under Lotus Moon Productions, Instagram under Lotus M Productions, Twitter under Lotus Moon Prod, and you can search us on YouTube under Lotus Moon Productions. Well, this has been LMP Music. Please be safe. Please be kind to one another. And with that, we are signing off.